Hello, this is class 9 of my arithmetic course. The purpose of this class is to prepare you for the next class, because in the next class you're going to take a test. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, why are we going to take a test? This isn't a real class. Well, for one thing, this is a real class, and secondly, you're going to take a test in this class for the same reason that you take a test in any class. The purpose of the test, well, there are many purposes for the test. The most important purpose is to figure out if you have learned what you're supposed to learn. And it's important to understand that the purpose of this course is to make you fluent in the math that is covered in this course. As I mentioned I believe I mentioned in the first class, math is a language. You have to know how to read and write the language. That's the primary purpose of this course. It's not just to learn how to do the calculations. The most important part of the course is to learn how to read and write the math. So you may think, well, I can do the calculations. You might be able to do a lot of these calculations without a pencil and paper. But again, that doesn't really matter, in the sense that the primary purpose of the course is to learn how to read and write the math. So when I say that you need to be fluent, what I mean is you have to read and write the math quickly, just as you would speak fluently in a language. You have to be able to talk quickly. You have to be able to form words quickly so that you can communicate to people. Well, it's the same with this course. What you want to do to prepare for the test is you want to go over everything that we learned. So far we've done, not including this class, we've done 8 classes. The first class was just telling you about the course. The second class was learning place value and how to pronounce the numbers and write the numbers. The second class was adding whole numbers, or the third class was adding whole numbers. Fourth class was subtracting whole numbers. Fifth class was memorizing multiplication facts, so on and so forth. So you're going to need to know all that stuff. You can use the videos to study for the test. But most importantly, you can use your own homework to study for the test. You can just look back to your homework, and if you did the homework, then that's going to be a good tool. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a practice test together. And the practice test is going to be pretty much exactly the same as the actual test you're going to take. It's not going to be the same exact numbers, but they're going to be the same types of problems. So I'm going to give you we're going to do one practice test together in class. That's this test here. And I'm going to give you a practice test for the homework. So before we do the practice test, there's just a few things that I want you to know. I'm going to expect that you know how to find the area of a rectangle. I'm going to expect that you know how to find the perimeter of a shape. And I'm going to expect that you know what the commutative rule of multiplication is. Okay, those are a few things that I'm just going to expect you to know. And everything else, pretty much, we're going to go over in the test now. I may have missed a few minor things, but nothing. Pretty much everything is going to be on these practice tests. So my suggestion is that when you do the homework, the practice test, you're not just going to do the practice test for the homework. You're also going to study everything that you've learned, all the homework that you've done. And what you should do is take the practice test, and you should time yourself to make sure that you can do it with enough time to finish, because you have to do the work in a certain amount of time. These tests, I'm going to give you, I would say 2 hours is the maximum amount of time that it should take for you to do these tests. Some students may be able to get them done in 1 hour. It's not really a race, but it should take between probably 1 hour and 2 hours. And each question is going to be worth 4 points. Again, I'm going to show you how to grade your test. And there's going to be 25 problems, so 4 times 25 is 100 points total. Again, there's a lot of people out there that are telling you that you have to learn this material. There are people that are telling you that one of the primary reasons that you go to school, or that one of the primary reasons that you learn the academic curriculum, whether it be homeschooling or wherever, is because it's one of the most important subjects in life is math. Now, I don't know if that's really true, but that's what everybody tells you, and they tell you you have to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours learning mathematics. So you have to prove to all those people that you actually know this stuff. And so here we go. Let's take the arithmetic practice test. First of all, as usual, name, date, course, title, and let's read the instructions. You got to always make sure you read the instructions when you take a test. As always, what I just said, name, date, course, number each problem, circle the number, rewrite the problem, and show all work. You're going to do everything on this test that you did in the homework. It's got to be orderly. I don't want to see a bunch of slop on your paper, and nobody else wants to see a bunch of slop on your paper. Put a rectangle around your answers, and it's just like we've always done. So your practice test should look just like this. And let's get going here. Number 1, and this is just going to be a sample of problems. These are not the only problems that you have to do. You have to, if you need practice with this stuff, you have to go back and do as many practice problems as you possibly can, or as many practice problems as you need. You don't have to do more than you really need to. So let's get on to number 1. What is the name of the place where the underlined number is? Well, remember, the number farthest to the right is the ones place, and then you multiply 1 by 10 to get the tens place, and you multiply 10 by 10 again to get the hundreds place. So ones place, tens place, hundreds place. So the name of the place is the hundreds place. What is the place value? Well, 8 is in the hundreds place. So that means it is 800. We can just write the number form of that. So you have to know what it means when they ask you for the name of the place. The name of the place is the hundreds place, and the place value is 800 because it's an 8 in the hundreds place. Number 2, write the following expression in number form. So we're going to turn this word form into number form. 5,352,608. So this is class number 2 that we're going over here. 5,352,608. And remember to put your commas. 5,352,608. All right, so that's the answer for that one. So that's an example. That's all stuff that we did in class 2. And by the way, I'm not going to order these problems from. I'm not going to order them so that the hardest ones are at the very end, and the easiest ones are at the beginning. I'm just going to kind of mix them up randomly. So you need to understand that when you take tests, you always want to do the easiest problems first, because you're going to get the same amount of points for each problem. It's 4 points for each problem. So these problems we did here were really easy, so you want to get those done first. Actually, I think this test I pretty much ordered it from easiest to hardest, but the next test we're going to do, they're mixed up. So always do the easiest ones first. All right, write the following number in word form. So 7 here is in the thousands place. So we say 7. I should probably move that over. 7,000. 4's in the hundreds place, so 400. And 9 is in the tens place and 1 is in the ones place, but remember for the two numbers furthest to the right, we're just going to use the special name 91. 91. And we should make sure that the first letter is capitalized. 7,491. 7,491. Remember, don't say and. Some people say 7,491. Technically, you can say and, I guess, but it's just traditional. Most textbooks, they don't use and unless you have a decimal, and we haven't learned decimals yet. All right, number 4. This is fill in the blanks. If you add numbers, the result is called the sum. Remember we learned that? It's called the sum of the numbers. If you subtract two numbers, the result is called the... What do you think that would be? It would be the difference of the two numbers. If you multiply two numbers, the result is called the product of the two numbers. By the way, you can pause the video if you want to do these yourself. If you divide two numbers, the result is called the quotient of the two numbers. Quotient. The number, if you're dividing numbers, the number you are dividing is called the dividend. And the reason that I'm pausing for each blank is I want you to guess it yourself if you want to pause the video. And the number you are dividing by is called the divisor. So remember, when you're dividing two numbers, you have to memorize 3 terms. One term is the quotient, the number that you get after you divide. One number is the dividend, the number that is being divided into parts. And the number that you're dividing by is called the divisor. So that's an example of fill in the blanks. Number 5, perform the following operations. So operations are like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, so on. So 36 times 52. Remember how we did this. We line up the numbers. They don't have to be lined up exactly for multiplication. They do for addition and subtraction, but not multiplication, but it makes it easier to line them up. And remember, we start with these numbers, and then we multiply these numbers, and then we multiply these numbers. So we stay on the 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 is a 2-digit number, so you have to carry a 1. Then 5 times 6 is 30. Then we have to add the 1, so that becomes 31. And there's no more numbers for 6 to multiply, so we just write the whole 31. Now we're going to multiply 52 times 3, but it's not really 52 times 3 because the 3 is in the tens place. So it's actually 52 times 30. So we have to put a 0 here. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 5 is 15. And there's no more numbers for 3 to multiply, so we just write the whole 15. Now remember that 1, we can actually just get rid of that. That 1 was for multiplying 6, so we don't add that 1. All right, so 6 times 52 is this number, and 30 times 52 is this number. But again, you don't really need to know that. You just need to know the algorithm. So now we add these two numbers. So 2 plus 0 is 2, 6 plus 1 is 7, 5 plus 3 is 8, 1 plus nothing is 1. Put your comma, and our final answer is 1,872. Now we didn't have to rectangle these terms because they're already underlined, so you don't really need to worry about that. So multiplication is more difficult than subtraction, but notice I put a multiplication problem first. So you might want to actually go to the easier problems first and do those. Make sure you get those done. So now we go to subtraction. 3,326 minus 2,102. So for subtraction, it does matter which number you put on top. You always have to put this number on the top, right? and the other number on the bottom. And put your subtraction sign. And you start with the numbers farthest to the right. 6 minus 2 is 4. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Put your comma, and there you go. 1,224. Subtraction is much easier than multiplication. So it'd be good to do that one first. All right, now we're going to do addition. It doesn't matter. And oh yeah, I forgot to say, remember you got to line those numbers up. If you don't line those numbers up, it's a 100% guarantee you're going to get the problem wrong. Trust me. Now again, with multiplication, it's not super important to line them up, just as long as you follow the algorithm. But with addition and subtraction, if you don't line them up, again, it's a guarantee you're going to get it wrong. So we have to line the numbers up. And unlike with subtraction, when you're adding, it doesn't really matter which one goes on the top or the bottom. Put your addition sign, and also remember the ones place in the numbers were lined up, the tens places were lined up, the hundreds places were lined up, so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter if the numbers are lined up if they're not lined up in the proper place. I have the ones place lined up. I have the tens place lined up, and so on and so forth. If you don't put the numbers in their proper places, you've got no chance of getting the right answer. All right, so we'll start with 6 plus 4 is 10. That's a 2-digit number, so we have to put the 0, carry the number in the tens place. 3 plus 0 plus 1 is 4. 8 plus 4 is 12. 7 plus 1 is 8. Put your comma. And the final answer is 8,240. All right. Number 8. Now we're going to do division. Remember, this number is called the dividend. This number is called the dividend. This number is called the divisor. And whatever our answer is going to be, that's called the quotient. This number always has to go inside. We're going to use the long division algorithm. So when I say it goes inside, what I mean is it goes in this little compartment here. And 92 goes on the outside. So remember this algorithm. 27,416 divided by 92. This is just an algorithm to help us. We're trying to figure out how many times 92 goes into 27,416, but that's going to take us all day long to figure that out. 92 plus 92 plus 92 plus 92. How many times does it add up to go into 27,416? I don't know. So we're going to use our multiplication facts and this long division algorithm to help us figure out the answer in a reasonable amount of time. So here's how the algorithm works. Does 92 go into 2? No, it does not. Does 92 go into 27? No, it does not. Does 92 go into 274? Yes, it does. I don't think it goes in evenly, but it does go in. So now we have to figure out 92 times what number goes into 274. So 92 is very close to 100, so I'm just going to pretend. Again, there's faster ways to do this. I'm showing you some of the faster ways. If you want to review this, just go back to classes 7 and 8 to see how we did this. But I'm just going to we're just doing one, maybe two or three problems in this practice test. So again, if you need more practice, don't just assume that what we're doing here and what you're going to do for what the practice test for homework is the only thing you have to do. That's irresponsible. That's what most students will do, is they'll just assume they can do the least amount of work, take the test, and they'll fail it. That's what the instincts are for most students. But that's irresponsible. If you want to take this course seriously and prove to everybody in the world that you can do this material, because that's why I'm here, is to make sure that you can do this material. If you can do this material, then there's nothing anybody can do to stop you from going forward. So understanding this material makes you powerful. People have to take you seriously if you can do these operations. So let's see here. where were we? So 92 is close to 100, right? So I'm just going to pretend that 92 is 100. Now, why am I going to do that? Well, because 100 is just easier to deal with. So 100 goes into 274 about 2 times. So I'm just going to say it goes in 2 times. 92 goes into 274 2 times, and I'm not going to put the 2 here. I'm not going to put the 2 here. I'm going to put the 2 above the last number, the last digit of the number that we divided into. So that's step 1, is figure out how many times 92 goes into 274. Step 2 is you multiply these two numbers. 92 times 2 is, well, you might have to do that off to the side. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 9 is 18. So 92 times 2 is 184. Then you do subtraction. 4 minus 4 is 0. 7 minus 8 we can't do, so we borrow from the 2, it becomes a 1. And then the 1 that we borrow from the 2, you add it to the 7, so it becomes 17. 17 minus 8 is 9. All right? And we want to make sure that this remainder is less than the divisor, and it is. If that number were not less than the divisor, then that would mean that 92 could have gone in more times. It has to go in the maximum amount of times, or else the algorithm is not going to work. So the important thing to understand here with the long division algorithm is that we did 3 steps. We're not done yet, but the long division, it cycles. Remember that? It cycles over and over and over again. And there are 3 steps in each cycle, so we just did the first cycle. So now, as always, if there are more numbers to the right, we have to bring down those numbers one by one. So we're gonna bring down the first number. And now we see, does 92 go into 901? Well, obviously it does. Let's pretend that 92 is 100. So we're going to do the second cycle now, and it has 3 steps, just like the first cycle had 3 steps. 3 steps, 3 steps, 3 steps over and over again. So the first step is how many times is 92 going to 901? We're going to pretend that 92 is 100. Obviously then it would go in, 100 goes into 900. I'm pretending that this is 900 instead of 901. Just to make things easier. This is called estimation. Remember, we learned estimation when doing these long division problems. That helps. And by the way, this is kind of a difficult problem to start off with because we have a 2-digit number. Not all the division problems on this test are going to be 2-digit numbers. So let's pretend this is 100. Pretend this is 900. 100 goes into 900 9 times, and that goes over the 1. Make sure you put it over the 1. You have to line up these numbers because in future calculations that's going to be important. So that's step 1, is to put the 9 there, figure out how many times 92 goes into 901. And we're not 100% sure that we did it right, so we just have to make sure. So the step 2 of the cycle is 9 times 92. And you can do that down here. 9 times 92. 9 times 2 is 18. Carry the 1. 9 times 9 is 81, plus 1 is 82. So 828, that's pretty close. So let's do step 3 of the cycle number 2. 1 minus 8 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the 0. We can't borrow from the 0, so we have to borrow from the 9. The 9 becomes 8. We borrowed 1 from 9, so it became 8. Then we give that 1 to the 10, and we give the 1 to the 0, and it becomes 10. So then we borrow from the 10, and that becomes 9. And then we give that number we borrowed from the 10 to the 1, and it becomes 11. So now we're ready to do 11 minus 8 is 3. And we have the 9 here. It's hard to see. 9 minus 2 is 7. And 8 minus 8 is 0. So the remainder is smaller than the divisor, which means that we probably did it correctly. We don't see any signs that we did it incorrectly so far. Now again, as I mentioned when we did the division problems, all of this subtraction, if you can do that in your head, that would be a big help. 901 minus 828, you'll find that that's not, if you use some tricks there, it's not that hard to do in your head. I'm going to pretend this is 830. I'm going to pretend this is 900. 900 minus 830, that's not too bad to do in your head. That's just 70. And then you just factor in these numbers. So it'd be 71 if it's 901, and then if it's 28, add 2 more, so it'd be 73. So there's tricks to do it faster. You don't have to do all this stuff inside the long division algorithm if you don't want to. All right, so now what do? We did one cycle here. Then we did a second cycle here. So now we're on to the third cycle. So because and the reason we know we have to keep going is because we have one more number that we haven't brought down yet. So as always, we bring that number down. And so now we start the entire cycle over again. How many times does 92 go into 736? That's step 1 of the last cycle. And I know it's the last cycle because there's no more numbers to bring down here. Now we know, again, there's tricks here to make things go faster. We need to figure out how many times 92 goes into 736. But we already know all this information here. That's going to help us. We know 92 times 9 is 828. So if 92 is going to go into 27,416 evenly, then it's a good chance that the number is just going to be 8. Because that'll make it smaller than 828. So let's just try 8. Put an 8 up there, and let's go ahead and multiply 92 times 8, 16, carry the 1, 8 times 9 is 72, plus 1 is 73. And what do you know? It's the exact number. So we don't have a remainder on this problem. 8 times 92 is 736. So we did step 1 is figure out that the 8 goes there, figure out how many times it goes in. Step 2, multiply 92 times 8. And step 3, subtract. And 736 minus 736 is obviously just 0. So there's no remainder and there's no more numbers to bring down, so we're done. 27,416 divided by 92 is 298. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, wait a second, I thought you're supposed to have like 4 or 5 minutes for each problem. Actually, I don't know if I told you that, but if the test is going to be 2 hours maximum, that means you have between 4 and 5 minutes for each problem. You're probably thinking, well, that seemed like it took too long. But I'm sitting here and I'm explaining all this to you. It's not going to take that long for you because you're not going to have to explain it to somebody else. You're just going to do it. All right? So let's see here. That was number 8. Now I've got good news. You're probably thinking to yourself, wow, that was insane. That was too difficult. I don't know if I can do this, if the test is going to be this hard. Well, like I said, I don't order the problems from the least hardest to the most hardest. That was a fairly involved problem, but the next problem, look at this, is 531 divided by 1. That problem takes about 2 seconds to write the answer. How many times does 1 go into 531? Well, it goes in how many times? If you said 531, you were right. That problem took us about 5 seconds. Number 10, this problem is going to take us 5 seconds also. In fact, all these problems are going to take us about 5 seconds each. 0 divided by 8, how many times does 8 go into 0? 0 times. I'm sorry, I should have given you a little bit of time to try that yourself. 567 divided by 0. How many times does 0 go into 567? See if you can figure that out. I'll give you a hint. It's a trick question. How many times can 0 go into 567? Well, it can go in infinity times. So we just say it's the quotient is undefined. In other words, the quotient doesn't exist. You can say it doesn't exist. You can say undefined. Some people put infinity, but that doesn't really, it's probably best just to write undefined. All right, number 12, fill in the bubble with greater than or less than. So 65,789, is that greater than or less than 80,001? I almost said 80,001, but remember we don't use ands unless you have a decimal. and we haven't learned decimals yet. So in other words, is this number greater or is this number greater? Well, look at the number farthest to the left. That tells us which number is greater. Obviously, this 8 is greater than 6, so that means, remember Pac-Man. Pac-Man wants to eat the bigger number. I don't know if you play Pac-Man. He wants to eat the greater number, and the greater number is this number. I don't know what I'm scribbling here. He wants to eat this number. So you put a greater than, or excuse me, that would be less than if you're reading left to right. So 65,789 is less than 80,001 because Pac-Man wants to eat the greater number, or the bigger number. So 80,001 is the greater number. All right, 13. We have 9 million times 8. Now you're probably thinking, well, that seems pretty difficult there, 9 million. But we have so many zeros here. So all you have to do is 8 times 9. You remember your multiplication facts? 8 times 9 is 72. Then all we have to do is add however many zeros there are here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's it. Put your commas. And that's it. So that one was pretty easy. The whole point of that problem is to demonstrate that when you have numbers where you just have one number and a bunch of zeros, they're really easy to multiply because those numbers are multiples of 10. All right, number 14. Find the difference between 5,007 and 3,419. Find the difference between 5,007 and 3,419. All right, so what does that mean? Well, if you remember difference, well, you tell me, what does difference mean? Let's say that I have $5,007 in my bank account, and you have $3,419. What is the difference between our bank accounts? Obviously, I have more than you. I have $5,007. You only have $3,419. What is the difference? What that means is just how much more do I have? So if you want to figure out how much more, we use subtraction. So write the bigger number on top, as always. Write the smaller number on the bottom. Make sure that the ones place is lined up with the ones place, the tens place is lined up with the tens place, so on and so forth. If you don't line these numbers up, you've got no hope of getting the right answer. Put your subtraction sign, and here we go. You can pause the video and try it yourself. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and pause the video, see what you can do, and when you come back, we'll do it together. All right, we're back. So 7 minus 9, we can't do that. So we have to borrow from the 0. But we can't borrow anything from 0 because 0 doesn't have anything, it's 0. So we have to borrow from the other 0. Can't do that because that 0 has nothing. So we have to go all the way to the 5. As usual, we borrow 1 from 5, so 5 becomes 4, and we give the 1 to the 0. So when we give the 1 to the 0, it becomes 10, but we have to borrow from the 10, that becomes 9. And we give the 1 that we borrowed from 10 to the other 0, and it becomes 10. Then we borrow from that 10, it becomes 9. And we give the 1 that we took from that 10 to the 7, and it becomes 17. Now we have 17 minus 9 is 8. Then we go back to these numbers. It's 9 now. It's not 10 or 0. It's 9 minus 1 is 8. And same thing here. We have 9 minus 4 is 5. And 4 minus 3 is 1. So the difference between our bank accounts, if you turn it into a bank account problem, the difference between our bank accounts is 1,588. And we should put dollars if it was a word problem, but this isn't a word problem. I was just using that as an example. 1,588. All right. Number 15, find the sum of 897 and 673,489. All right. So what does sum mean? Do you remember what sum means? It means addition. 673,489. And you know what? I'm gonna mix things up here. I'm gonna put the smaller number on the top. You can see that with addition, it doesn't really matter. 7 plus 9 is 16. Carry the 1. 8 plus 9 plus 1 is 18. Carry the 1. 4 plus 8 plus 1 is 13. Carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 7 plus nothing is 7. 6 plus nothing is 6. Count 3 over. Put the comma as usual. And your final answer is 674,386. And by the way, you're going to need to know what the word sum means, and you're going to need to know you're going to need to know the term sum and the term difference and the term product and the term divisor and quotient and all that type of stuff, dividend, everything. You're going to need to know those terms. I'm not going to give you the answers to those on the test. All right, 16, find the product of 348 and 976. Now this one's going to be fairly involved, so you might want to skip this problem and go on to another one. But just make sure that you put a big old star there saying that you skipped it. Or else you might forget that you skipped it. And your 2 hours will be up and you'll miss that problem. All right, so multiplication, 348 times 976. Is it important to line the numbers up? Well, it just makes it easier, but you don't have to line them up for multiplication, remember. It's addition and subtraction that's the most important operations that you have to line up the numbers. All right, so we start with the 6. We multiply 6 times 348. So 6 times 8 is 48. Carry the 4. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 plus 2 is 20. Now again, I just want to recap what I did there. I did 6 times 8. Then I did 6 times 4. Then I did 6 times 3. And if I got a 2-digit number, I had to carry the number in the tens place. 6 times 8 was 48, so I had to put the number in the ones place here, and I had to carry the number in the tens place. 6 times 4 was 24, so I had to put the 6 times 4 is 24, and I had to add the 4 that we carried, and I got 28, so I had to put the number in the ones place here, and I had to put the number in the tens place up here. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, I have no idea what's going on here, then that means possibly two things. One is you didn't memorize your multiplication facts, or 2, you haven't done this stuff in a while, and you need to go back and review it. So if you need to review this stuff, that's okay. That's the point of this class, is to review all this stuff. But remember, we're just doing a practice test here. We're not doing tons and tons of these problems. In order to prepare for the test, you're going to have to do more than one of these problems. And you're probably thinking, well, I can do 2, right? No, you can't do 2. You got to do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many you need, to the point where you can do this stuff without even thinking about it. All right, so we multiplied 6 by all these numbers. So now we're going to move on to the 7, multiply 7 by all these numbers. And it's probably best to go ahead and erase these numbers that we carried so we don't get confused. But before we do that, we got to put a placeholder, as usual. So now we do 7 times 8 is 56. Carry the 5. 7 times 4 is 28. Plus the 5 is 32. Actually 33. Put the 3, carry the 3. And then 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 3 is 24. And that's it for the 7. All right, so now we're going to go on to the 9. But remember, now we have to put 2 placeholders. Every time you go down to another line, you have to put 1 more placeholder. But don't worry about it. I'm not going to make you multiply 4-digit numbers. the greatest number of digits I'm going to make you multiply is two 3-digit numbers, because we just don't have the time or the energy to do anything more. There are more important things in life than that, that's for sure. All right, so now we move on to the 9. So this was the 6 multiplying 6 by everything. This was the 7 multiplying 7 by everything. And this is going to be the 9 multiplying 9 by everything. Is this row. So 9 times 8 is 72. Put the 2, carry the oh, we forgot to erase these numbers that we carried. We don't want to get confused. 9 times 8 is 72. Put the 2, carry the 7. 9 times 4 is 36. 36 plus 7 is 43. Put the 3, carry the 4. 9 times 3 is 27 plus 4 is 31. So put your 31 there. And at this point, I want to make it extremely clear that if these numbers are not lined up, you have zero chance of getting the right answer. And how do I know that? Well, the reason I know that is because at this stage of this problem, we're now going to be required to add all these numbers. But remember, when you add or subtract numbers, they have to be lined up in the proper places. This is all the ones place, this is all the tens place, this is all the hundreds place, and so on and so forth. If they're not lined up properly, then you're going to get the problem wrong. So 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 plus 6 is 14. Carry the 1. 2 plus 3 plus 0 plus 1 is 6. 2 plus 4 is 6 plus 3 is 9. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus nothing is 3. So that's our final answer. 339,648. That was a big number. So I'm just going to do that on my calculator to make sure we did that correctly. 348 times 976, 339, 648. We did it correctly. I know it sounds like I cheated there, right? Well, you're not going to have a calculator on the test, but I can use a calculator myself, because I'm not in this class. I don't need to test for this stuff. All right, so 17. And again, see how hard that problem was? You probably want to leave that problem till the end. You're going to have a lot of tests in school, or whatever you're doing, whatever curriculum you're using, homeschooling, the non-schooling approach, whatever you're using. If you're going to learn math, then you're going to have tests where the problems are not always going to be ordered from the easiest to the hardest problems. This was a pretty hard problem in terms of the amount of work we had to do. So you might want to leave that one to the end. But again, just put a big old star right there, so that you remember to come back to it. Number 7, Thomas had 56 coins in his pocket. He wanted to distribute them equally to himself and his 6 friends. How many coins did each person get? Now, this is actually a trick problem. Now, I'm not trying to trick you, but I just want you to know that in word problems, it's extremely important to read and understand exactly what the problem is asking you. And so this is kind of a twist problem. I don't think I'm going to put a twist problem on the test, because that's just unfair to give you twist problems in this course. This is your first math course. It's arithmetic, so I don't want to trick you in this course, but this is just an example. So the test is not going to have any of these types of problems on it where there's a little trick here, but this is just a type of problem where there's a little twist where students might go wrong here. And with word problems, there's always little tricks to them. You're going to see that frequently. So the trick, what am I talking about? The trick is He has 56 coins and he distributes them equally to himself and 6 friends. So that's the trick. What a lot of students are going to do is they're going to look at that 6 and they're going to say, 6, I should divide 56 by 6. No, you should not. Because he's dividing them to himself and his 6 friends, which means that's a total of 7 people. So you have to divide 56 by 7. All right, 56 divided by 7. Go ahead and write that. Should show that. Show what we're doing. And if you know your multiplication facts, you should know the answer to that. 56 divided by 7. How many times does 7 go into 56? 7 times what number is 56? If you know your multiplication facts, you should get that in about 2 seconds. It's 8. So each person gets 8 coins. All right, number 18, how many seconds will it take a meteorite to travel 84,030 miles if it flies 6 miles per minute? There are 60 seconds in 1 minute. This is another example of this is kind of a challenge problem. The word problems on the test I'm going to give you are going to be slightly easier than these problems. How many seconds will it take a meteorite to travel 84,030 miles if it flies 6 miles per minute? Now, when it says per minute, that means it flies 6 miles in 1 minute. Okay? 6 miles in 1 minute. And it's asking how many seconds. And it tells us there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So this is a 2-part problem. That's why it's a challenge problem. So what you would want to probably do is, again, put a big old star by this problem and go on to an easier one. But we're just going to go ahead and do this now. So step 1, we're going to figure out how many minutes it'll take for the meteorite to travel 84,030 miles. So we know it travels 6 miles in 1 minute. In 1 minute, it only travels 6 miles. Okay? So that means if you times 6 by 2, 12 miles, that'll be 2 minutes. Add another 6, you get 18 miles, that'll be 3 minutes. Add another 6, you get 24 miles, that'll be 4 minutes. And you just keep adding 6s and 6s until you get 84,030 miles. But obviously that's going to take forever. And so in other words, we're trying to figure out how many times does 6 go into 84,030. But you know that that's a division problem. Because we're trying to figure out 6 times what number equals 84,030. All right, so 84,000, we have to use the long division algorithm. In fact, let me move that down a little bit. 84,030 divided by 6. So we're going to use the long division algorithm. 6 times what number equals 84,030? So how many times does 6 go into 84,030? That's the same thing as dividing 84,030 by 6. Because if you say how many times does 6 go in, you're saying 6 times what number? 6 times what number? We'll call the number just question mark. 6 times what number equals 84,030? That means how many times does 6 go into 84,030? But that also means if you flip it around using the commutative rule of multiplication, what you're asking is what number times 6 equals 84,030. So in other words, whatever that number is, that's the number that you get when you break 84,030 into 6 equal parts, each part being an equal size. So again, we use the commutative rule of multiplication there. But again, you don't need to know any of that. All you need to know is how to do this algorithm, and you'll be fine. Now again, you're probably thinking, well, don't I need to know all that stuff? You just explained it. I need to know it, right? Well, most students in elementary school, middle school, high school and college, they don't know that. They don't think about it. And to be honest with you, most teachers don't think about it. Most math teachers in the entire K-12 system, kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, they don't think about it, and they wouldn't even know it off the top of their heads. So it's just not something that you need to know. I'm just going over it so you can see exactly what's going on. Why is it called division? Because you're dividing 84,030 into 6 equal parts. But you're also saying how many times 6 can go into 84,030. But again, you don't need to know all that. You just need to do the long division algorithm. How many times does 6 go in? Let's do it. So we first start off, again, we're going to do cycles. Each cycle has 3 steps. So the first step, how many times does 6 go into 8? Now, if it doesn't go into 8, then you have to figure out how many times does 6 go into 84. If it doesn't go into 84, you have 6 times, how many times does 6 go into all these numbers, so on and so forth. But luckily, 6 does go into 8. It goes how many times? 1 time. That's step 1. Step 2, multiply 6 and 1. 6 times 1 is 6. Step 3 is subtract. 8 minus 6 is 2. 3 steps for every cycle. Now we bring the next number down. And we go through those same 3 steps. How many times is 6 go into 24? It goes in 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. And subtract and get 0. We did another cycle. That was 3 steps for the second cycle, just as there was 3 steps for the first cycle. Before we do anything, we bring down the other number, and we start the third cycle. 6 goes into 0 how many times? So after we brought down the number, 6 still didn't go into our remainder. So if after you bring down the number, 6 still doesn't go in, then you put a 0 up here. And look how I'm lining up these numbers. I'm making sure that the 1 is above the 8, the 4 is above the 4, the 0 is above the 0, so on and so forth. That's going to be important in future classes. So now, because 6 didn't go into these zeros, we have to bring down another number before we go into the third cycle. We bring down the 3. But now, again, 6 still doesn't go in. So after you brought down the number, it still doesn't go in, so you put a 0. You can think of it as 6 goes into 3 0 times. All right, sorry about this. My computer is starting to run a little slow for some reason. All right, so now we bring down the next number. We have to keep going because there's still more numbers, right? So bring down the next number, we get 0. Now how many times does 6 go into 30? 6 goes into 35 times. So now we can start the third cycle. That's the first step of the third cycle. 6 times 5 is equal to 30. And 30 minus 30 is 0. So now there are no more numbers over here to bring down. So we're done. We're done with the first step of the problem. So how many times does 6 go into 84,030? It goes in 14,005. So 6 miles is 1 minute. So if 6 goes into 84,030 14,005 times, that means there are 14,005 minutes. Again, you're just counting how many times 6 goes in. If 6 goes in 1 time, it's 1 minute. If 6 goes in 2 times, then it's 2 minutes, because there's 6 miles for every minute. This is very simple stuff. The only reason it seems difficult is because we're using this huge algorithm and all these big numbers. So the 1 minute comes with the 6. 6 goes in 3 times, and it would be 3 minutes. 100 times, it would be 100 minutes. But it goes in 14,005 times, so it's 14,005 minutes. That was step 1 of this challenge problem. And again, I don't think I'm going to give you challenge problems on this particular test because you have enough on your plate already. I mean, you've learned long division. You've learned multiplication facts. You've learned how to multiply 3-digit numbers. You've learned all kinds of terms. You've learned so much. So I'm not gonna push you into doing challenge problems, but I figure on this practice test I might as well just make things a little harder just to get you prepared for the test. But the test you're going to do for the homework, I don't think there are many challenge problems on that practice test. All right, but we're not done with this problem. because they want to know how many seconds will it take. We have figured out how many minutes. So we have to use this information. There are 60 seconds in 1 minute. So we want to figure out how many seconds. We have 14,005 minutes, but for each one of those minutes, again, there's 14,005 minutes. For each one of those minutes, there's 60 seconds. So 60 plus 60 plus 60 plus 60 plus 60, 14,005 times. So that's multiplication. 14,000 times 14,005 times 60. Now this multiplication is not going to be as hard as you think because there's a lot of zeros. So 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0, 0 times 4 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0. Again, we're just multiplying this 0 times all these numbers. Then you go into the 6. So because we're going to the next number, you have to put a placeholder. You have to put a 0 here. So now 6 times 5 is 30. Put your 0, carry the 3. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 4 is 24. Put your 4, carry the 2. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Make sure that all these numbers are lined up. And I'll tell you something, if they're not lined up, go back and fix it and make sure that they're lined up correctly, because I guarantee you the problem will be wrong if you don't line those numbers up. Remember, when you add or subtract numbers, you have to line them up properly. 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 3 is 3, 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 4 is 4, 8 plus nothing is 8. So the final answer, now we're in seconds, there are 840,300 seconds in 14,005 minutes. So how many seconds will it take a meteorite to travel 84,030 miles if it flies 6 miles per minute? The answer is 840,300 seconds. All right. So again, you might want to leave that problem till the very end, and it's not going to take this long for you to do these problems because you're not going to have to explain them like I'm explaining them. Find the perimeter of the following shape. So notice I'm not telling you how to find the perimeter. I'm just saying find the perimeter. Remember, you have to know how to find the perimeter. You have to know what the perimeter is. The perimeter, if you remember what the perimeter is, pause the video and try this problem, and then when you're done, we'll come back and do it together. If you don't remember what the perimeter is just the sum of the lengths of all the sides of a shape. So you just add up all the numbers. For example, if you had a garden that was this shape and you wanted to know how much fence you should buy to put around the shape, you would need to know how to calculate the perimeter of the garden. So remember, when we're adding, we have to line up all these numbers. Again, you can stop the video and try this on your own if you want. So we have to line up all the numbers properly. Put your addition sign. We have to add up all these numbers first, then these numbers, then these numbers. We have to carry if the numbers are bigger than one-digit numbers. 9 plus 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19, plus 3 is 22. Carry the 2. Add up all those numbers and you get 27. Carry the 2. Add up all those numbers, you get 8. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and erase these numbers we carried just so that doesn't confuse us. So 872. Now if you write 872, you're going to get a point taken off because you didn't write IN for inches. All right, these are inches. In fact, I should go ahead and write the whole word there because you may not know the abbreviation for inches yet. You're going to learn that type of stuff when you take chemistry courses or any kind of science courses, really. You're going to learn the abbreviations for all these units of length and volume and area and all that type of stuff. Inches. And again, this picture is not drawn to scale, so don't criticize me for saying that this is 231 inches. It's not. This is about maybe 1.5 inches at the most. So the final answer is 872 inches. IN stands for inches. All right, number 20. The area of a rectangle is the product of its length and width. Find the area of the following shape. Actually, in this problem, I'm actually giving you the definition of area, but I'm not going to give you the definition of area in the test that I'm going to give you in the next class. You're just going to have to know that to find the area of a rectangle, you have to multiply the length and the width. All right, 406 times 92. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. 2 times 4 is 8. Put a placeholder. 9 times 6 is, and get rid of that 1. 9 times 6 is 54. Carry the 5. 9 times 0 is 0. Plus 5 is 5. 9 times 4 is 36. Make sure these numbers are all lined up, or else you're going to be in trouble. You're going to get the wrong answer. All right, 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 plus 4 is 5. 8 plus 5 is 13. 6 plus 1 is 7. 3 plus nothing is 3. So the final answer is 37,352. And now this is area, so it's going to be FT to the second power. That means square feet. All right. I know you haven't learned the notation or the names for area and volume, and we haven't done volume problems, by the way. We'll probably do those later on in this course. So you might want to just spell out square feet instead of writing this notation, unless you can remember that notation. That'll be fine. All right. So on to 21. And again, I just want to say that this is you're gonna go faster than I'm going, because again, I'm explaining all this stuff. It's taking me longer. Rachel has $341 in her bank account. Lana has $4,221 in her bank account. How much more does Lana have than Rachel? So why don't you attempt this problem, and when you're done, we'll come back and do it together. All right, we're back. This is a subtraction problem. We want to find the difference between their bank accounts. So 4,221 minus 341. 1 minus 1 is 0. 2 minus 4 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the 2. It becomes a 1. Give the 1 to the 2. It becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. Then 1 minus 3 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the 4. It becomes a 3. And we give the 1 that we borrow from the 4 to the 1 over here, and that becomes an 11. 11 minus 3 is 8. And then finally 3 minus nothing is just 3. So let's see here. Lana has $3,880 more than Rachel. I'm not going to make you write a full sentence for that, though. All right, 22. Remember, we only have 25 problems, so we only have 4 problems left. Each pizza box can fit 1 pizza. That makes sense, right? Obviously, a pizza box, they're not going to fit 2 pizzas in there. At least I haven't seen that. Each pizza box can fit 1 pizza. 1 pizza contains 8 slices of pizza. I don't know if you've noticed that, but pizzas are usually cut into 8 slices. If there are 27 pizza slices, how many boxes will have a complete pizza? So let's say that you're having a huge party, and people leave slices of pizza just laying around. You should probably throw them in the trash if they're just leave them around. But I'm just trying to think of some sort of a real world example here. So 27 pieces of pizza are just out on plates, and you have to put them back into the refrigerator because for some reason they didn't eat them. So there's 27 pizzas left. This, for example, if you're taking the slices out and putting them on napkins on a table for people to go up and take a piece of pizza, but you go back after your party and you find out that 27 slices were not taken, so you have to take those slices and put them back into boxes. In the real world, you'd probably just put them into plastic bags, but let's just say you're putting them back into the boxes. So each box can hold 8 slices. You have 27 slices. So if each box contains 8 slices and you have 27 slices, how many boxes will have a complete pizza? How many boxes will be filled up by the slices? How many slices will be left over? So you're trying to figure out, go ahead and attempt this problem, pause the video, and when you come back, we'll do it together. You're trying to figure out, well, I'm not going to tell you the answer. You go ahead and try it yourself, and then we'll do it when we come back. All right, we're back. So you're trying to figure out how many times 8 goes into 27. So 27 divided by 8. We don't really need to do that, to be honest with you. We can just use our multiplication facts. 8 plus 8 is 16, plus another 8 is 24. So that's it. That was 3 times. 8 times 3, we can use multiplication facts also. Like I said, 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4, that goes too much. So 8 goes in. If you have 27 slices, you'll have 3 boxes total that you can fill up. So 27 divided by 8, we can write a division expression for this, is 3. And that adds up to 24. 24 slices fill up 3 boxes. And then how many are left over? 27 minus 24 is remainder 3. So we filled up 3 boxes and we have 3 slices left over. So what that means is that 3 boxes are filled and 3 slices are left over. Again, I'm not going to make you write complete sentences. We don't really have time for that. All right, so as you can see, 22 was a problem that was pretty close to the end of this test, but it wasn't that hard of a problem. So it's much better to do that problem before you have to do, for example, this problem. So it matters what order you do the problems in. All right, so 27, is the following statement true or false? 5 times 3 is equal to 3 times 5. Pause the video, and when you come back, we'll figure this out. All right, so remember at the beginning of the course, or the beginning of the class, I told you that I wanted you to memorize the commutative rule of multiplication. That's what this is. It's the commutative rule of multiplication. 5 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 5, so the answer is true. They're both equal to 15. All right, let's try 24. We're almost done. We only have 2 more problems. The distance between Billy's house and the grocery store is 834 feet. If Billy has already walked 98 feet, how much farther must he walk? So again, the distance between Billy's house and the grocery store is 834 feet. If Billy has already walked 98 feet, how much farther must he walk? And this is assumed that he's walking in a straight line, but I guess that's pretty obvious. So pause the video, try this problem, and when you're done, we'll attempt it together. All right, we're back. So we want to figure out how much more you add to 98 to get to 834. In order to do that, you subtract. Make sure that you line up the numbers. Again, with subtraction and addition, you line up the numbers. With multiplication, not that important. With division, it's important. So 4 minus 8, we can't do it, so we have to borrow from the 3. It becomes a 2. We give the 1 that we borrowed from the 3 to the 4. It becomes 14. Then we have 14 minus 8 is 6. 2 minus 9, we can't do that. So we have to borrow from the 8. It becomes 7. The 1 we took from the 8 adds to the 2 to become 12. So 12 minus 9 is 3. And then 7 minus nothing is 7. 736. So he has to go 736. But if you just write that, you're going to get a point taken off because we need 736 feet, which we abbreviate as FT. All right, that one wasn't too bad. Now we go to the last problem. Why don't you attempt this problem? This is another challenge problem. It's a two-part problem. So let's see if you can do this problem on your own. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to put any two-part problems on this test because, again, you're just learning the operations for the first time in your life. So this stuff is hard enough without having to do these challenge problems. But let's see if you can do it. So pause the video, and when you come back, we'll do it together. All right, we're back. The speed of light is approximately 670 million miles per hour. Light moves fast. If you turn the light switch on, the light will just travel through the air so quickly that we can't even notice how fast it seems just almost instantaneous. 670 million miles per hour. Can you imagine traveling that fast? How many miles? And that again, that's not the speed of sound. You may have heard that sound travels a certain speed. Sound travels fast, but it travels nowhere near as fast as light. How many miles will light travel in 3 days? All right, so the reason this is a two-step problem is because it told us the speed that light travels per hour. It travels 670 million miles in 1 hour. This is asking us how many miles will light travel in 3 days. Days are different than hours. Okay, so they have to tell us 1 day is 24 hours, and this becomes a two-part problem. So again, don't get discouraged by this because I'm not going to ask you two-part problems on the test. The reason I'm asking you two-part problems on this practice test is because why not? I mean, it's all just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It's all the same thing pretty much. So the problems that on your test will be easier than this one. So first we have to figure out how many hours. I mean, there's two ways we can do it. We can figure out how many miles are in 1 day. We can figure out that first. So to do that, you would multiply 670 million by 24, and that would give you the number of miles in 1 day. And then you multiply that number by 3 because we have 3 days. The other way you can do it is you can take 3 days and convert 3 days into hours. How many hours in 3 days? So then you figure out how many hours, and then you take that and multiply it by 670 million to get the final distance. And we're looking for a distance. How many miles will light travel in 3 days? All right, so let me try to figure out how should I do this. Let's see here. Well, I'm just gonna pick one here. So let's try to figure out how many. Let's try to figure out how many hours are in 3 days. So we know there's 24 hours in 1 day, and we're trying to figure out how many hours in 3 days. So we multiply 24 I'm going to put the Roman numeral 1. That means part 1. 24 times 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. So we found out that there are 72 hours in 3 days. All right. Now the reason we did that is because now we know 670 million miles are traveled in 1 hour. That's what per means. It means 1. So 670 million miles in 1 hour is the speed of light. We have 72 hours. So we could just add 670 million. We could add that together, 670 million plus 670 million plus 670 million 72 times. But it would be much easier just to use multiplication, which is a much more powerful form of addition. And the reason it's powerful is because we know, you guessed it, we know our multiplication facts. If you don't know your multiplication facts, go way back to class number 5 or 4 or whatever that was and memorize those facts. So 670 million times 72. All right. 2 times 0, 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 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Then you put your placeholder as usual. Now we do 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0, 7 times 0, 7. I'm already losing track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros starting from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros, and then one more 0 for that one. And then 7 times 7 is 49. Carry the 4. Let's just change that to a 4. 7 times 6 is 42, plus 4 is 46. And please make sure that these numbers are lined up. If they're not lined up, I can guarantee you're not going to get the right answer. My computer's starting to go pretty slow here. Probably because it's hot in this room. Whenever computers are hot, they don't run as fast. You can probably hear the fan going on in the computer. All right, so now we add these numbers. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 4 plus 0 is 4. 3 plus 9 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 plus 1 plus 1 is 8. 4 plus nothing is 4. And that's a huge number. So we count 3 over 1, 2, 3, comma. 1, 2, 3, comma. So we have, let's go ahead and write that number. 4824. 4824. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. So comma, comma, comma. Every 3 numbers write a comma. So 48, this is 48 billion, 240 million hours, or excuse me, miles. Now, a lot of times students get to this point and they forget, what were we trying to find? Well, if you forget what you're trying to find, that's okay. I just forgot what we were trying to find. It doesn't really matter. Because we can just go back and ask, what was it asking? How many miles? So I didn't need to remember. I could just go back and see it said miles, and then that's your answer, miles. Sometimes it's easy to get confused and forget what you're trying to figure out in the first place. All right, so that's the test. Let me just check that last one with the calculator. 72 times 670 million. Yep, that looks right. Yep, pretty sure that's right. All right, so that's that's the end of that practice test. Now again, I don't know how long that test went. I'm not keeping track of the time. But it took a lot longer than it needs to take because I was explaining every single number. Now at this point, what you want to do is you want to relax. You want to take like a 5-minute break or whatever you need. And then you want to casually just go back and read through and make sure that you did all the problems correctly. You're not going to want to do that because you're probably going to be a little tired, but you always want to go back and check the problems. Make sure you did everything correctly. So that's this is your homework assignment. That's pretty much the end of the class. As you can see, the homework assignment is a practice test, so take a screenshot of that. And if you want to take screenshots of the individual pages, that's page 1, page 2. Wait a second, I'm sorry. This program keeps doing weird things. That's page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. And as usual, notice that I'm giving you all the answers. I'm sorry that I didn't write the answers in this column. That makes it a lot easier to do the problem without seeing the answer ahead of time, but I just I wasn't thinking about that on this. And I don't want to reorder it. I don't have the energy or the time to do that. So just don't look at the answer, put something over it as you do this practice test. So again, you want to go back and look at everything that we did in the classes. You want to look at your homework to help you study. All your homework should be correct because you have the answers. You know, if you got the right answer, you know you did the homework correctly, so you can go back and check your homework, and that's a way that you can study for the test. So go back and look at your homework. That's the primary way that you're going to study for the test. And then when you're ready, you can take this practice test and time yourself to see how you're going to perform on the practice test. Now, if you take the practice test and after 2 hours you're only halfway done, then that means you haven't studied enough to get a good grade on this practice test. Or that means that maybe you haven't done the homework. Remember, in all the classes I keep telling you to do the homework, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to do it. A lot of students are just going to say, well, I'm going to skip that. I don't need to do the homework. Maybe your parents don't understand the importance of you doing the homework, and they're not making you doing the homework. They're not making you do the homework. Well, if your parents don't understand, or if you don't understand, or if your teachers don't understand, or anybody who is related to your education, if they don't understand the principle of doing homework, you're in big trouble. Because you have no chance whatsoever of passing this test if you didn't do the homework in the last 8 classes. So you're going to have to go back and start from class 1 or class 2 or wherever you need to start from to learn all that information and do all the homework and do it completely, correctly, organize it, put it in your binder just like I told you to do from the beginning. And then when you're done with all that, take the practice test again. And do not take the actual test in the next class until you get to the point where you can actually take the practice test, and you need to get 70 out of 100 points. Now again, there's 25 questions on this test, and each one is worth 4 points, so a total of 100 points. So if you got part of the problem correct, you can maybe give yourself half of the points. If you forget to write for example, if you're doing a word problem and you write 892 instead of 892 feet, you might take off 1 point because you didn't write feet. I would like to grade your paper for you, but I can't do that because I don't know you. I don't know where you are. And so, let's see here. What else do I need to tell you? So take that test, make sure that you do it correctly, and do not go on to the next class. Do not take the test in the next class unless you actually can pass the test, pass the practice test. And so I think that's about it for this class. Again, remember to do the test, grade yourself. Be sure to do it in less than 2 hours and check all your answers, just like usual. If you don't check your answers, you're wasting your time. So that's it for this class. In the next class, we're going to be taking the test, and you're going to grade the test and see how you did. And if you don't do well in the test in the next class, I'm not going to write another test for you to retake again, because I just don't have the time. It takes me like 4 hours to write one of these tests. It's not easy. Again, I write these tests to avoid copyright problems if I'm just copying it from a book. And also I prefer my own tests rather than the tests in a lot of textbooks. So again, remember the commutative rule of multiplication, the perimeter of a shape, and the area of a rectangle. You're going to need to know that. Those three things. And so that's it for this class. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next class. And remember, the next class is the test. It's going to test you on all the material from class 1 to class 8. I'll see you then.